Welcome. Listen, the studio is in transition, but it will be ready for the season coming up. And this is a question I've been seeing a lot. I've gotten a lot on Patreon, and it needs to be addressed. Which is the better bet? Chargers over 9.5 wins or Broncos over 9.5 wins? I think it's clear and simple. Open shut case. For me, it's the Denver Broncos over 9.5. And both of these teams are getting a ton of hype. And I understand why. Chargers were great for us last year, and you see the Chargers with Harbaugh, Herbert. You like that combination, and I understand why there's optimism. And with the Broncos, if you take out the quarterback position, this could be considered a top five roster in the league. So I get the optimism. I'm just not optimistic about the Chargers. I think the Chargers could have some serious problems this year. I'm not saying they're going to win 7, 8 games or the Raiders are going to pass them into AFC West. I'm not saying anything like that. But I really feel like people are overlooking the flaws and limitation of this Chargers roster. And I'm going to get into it firstly. I'm the biggest Herbert fan there is. This isn't anything to do with Justin Herbert. This isn't an Emmanuel Acho take. It isn't. I love Justin Herbert. But my issue is with the way this team is constructed. We can start with the offense. Outside of McConkey, who are you going to throw to? And I didn't like the Mike Williams signing, and he obviously didn't like it, and he retired early. So you bring in Keenan Allen, who I felt looked washed last year. I know someone's going to get in the keyboard and say 70 catches last year, but Keenan Allen looked very, very slow, and he's never been a speed guy. He's always been a good guy over the middle, but don't they have that with McConkey already? I do think Keenan Allen is an upgrade on what they have, but also that's like saying a poor person gets $100 more a week. Obviously, it's an upgrade on what they have, but this is a bottom five receiving core, and it continues in that same rhythm and status. I'm not seeing anything that can change it, and people will be optimistic about draft picks. It's the offseason. We haven't seen any real games yet, so I get it. Also, you look at the way this team is constructed. They go heavy on the offensive line. Money being splashed around, the Joe Alt pick. I love Rashawn Slater. But can I be honest? That offensive line wasn't all that dominant last year for the resources put in, the time put in, and the amount they ran the football. Once it got to week 6 and week 7, the run game dried up, and it was Herbert and McConkey making magical play after magical play. I just wonder, what's the variance on that? How long can that keep up? Can they do that against real defense after real defense? And you saw the limitations in that Texans game. And the offense really isn't my biggest issue, but let's just finish with the offense. And anyone who watched Chargers games last year knows that Greg Roman is the offensive coordinator. Does Greg Roman have some good ideas? Yes, but also he is very limited in his outlook. There's going to be a lot of obvious runs, few play action on 3rd and short, and you saw that hurt the Chargers. And the Chargers played like an early 90s, late 80s football team. Okay, great. But when you have a team that's scoring between 17 and 23 points a game, and you get to the opposing team's 33-yard line, and it's 4th and 1, and you're going to send out the field goal team for a long field goal, that does become an issue. And then that does show in the high leverage situations. Like, you can't play the Falcons every week. You can't play bad football teams every week. So I do think, I know people don't like analytics, but I think going for it on 4th down is something that's important. And you saw how far it took the Commanders, Eagles, etc. But my biggest issue, because I think Herbert will be able to make this offense in the mid-range of the NFL, my biggest issue is this defense. And I love the defense coordinator. I love the way this defense plays. I felt like Derwin James was maybe the best defensive player in the league last year. Cam Hart was absolutely phenomenal at corner. But you lose Poona Ford. You lose Bosa. And I know Poona Ford, nose tackle, defensive tackle. He's not a big rusher, the passer. But he made a huge difference last year, and he was absolutely phenomenal, and they let him go in that interior. And then you look at letting Bosa go. I actually understand it, but have they replenished it? Have they replaced it? And if you watched and followed the Chargers like we did last year, very lucrative for us, but I'm not living in last year. But if you watch this team and observe them last year, you could clearly see once Bosa started getting dinged up around week 7, week 8 range, Khalil Mack had no help. He had no animals to hunt with, and that was an issue. And you saw the pass rush slowly decline as the year went on. And the Chargers defense, I felt like they did overperform and did get a little bit of luck on the variance. The red zone defense is very good. Give them credit. But I do think that could break. I really feel like that well can break. So unless some of these young defensive linemen step up, I think the secondary could have more issues this year. Now, let's get to the Broncos. I think this Broncos defense has a chance to be elite. The secondary, I do think the Ravens secondary is going to be better this year, but the Broncos have a case to be the best secondary in the league. We know Pat Surtain. We know Moss. We know they drafted another young guy to come in there as well. But the big thing about the Broncos is I love Vance Joseph. I felt like he was one of the best coordinators in the league last year, whether you talk offense or defensive side of the football. And I think Vance Joseph is an absolute force of nature, and no one wants to give him the credit he deserves because Sean Payton takes all the air out of the room, as he should. But this defensive line, this pass rush, this front seven of the Broncos is absolutely fierce, fluid, and interchangeable. They will come at you in waves. And you got players like Bonito. People don't even know about how good he is. I think this Broncos team has a chance to be an elite defense. And I don't say that a lot, especially in 2025 NFL, where the rules are completely different. And then you get to Sean Payton. What he did last year with Bo Nix was magical. I do think Bo Nix is a little bit of a liability. I'm not buying into the hype that he's going to go keep ascending like he did weeks 9 through 17 last year. I'm not saying that, but I do think Sean Payton will get this team in good situations, and I think a signing like Evan Ingram is what you need. You know, the Chargers are bringing in Keenan Allen to help Justin Herbert. When the Broncos get Evan Ingram, maybe the most low-key best signing in the league. And they also added to this defense. And I have to say, for all the money invested, all the high draft picks that the Chargers invested in this offensive line, all the talk about smash mouth 80s football from Harbaugh, punting at your 50 on 4th and 1 against the Raiders, all that talk, I think the Broncos have a better offensive line. And the Broncos, for some reason, they were not able to run the ball a lick last year. They got a rookie in at running back. Let's see if that improves. But this Broncos offensive line is good. And you add Evan Ingram, the Cortland Sutton. Obviously, the targets for the Broncos aren't the best. They are in that bottom 10 category in terms of targets. But I don't think they need it. I think this is a defensive football team with an absolute genius at offensive coordinator. Give me the Broncos over 9.5, and I'm getting against the Chargers this year. Even though I love Harbaugh, I do love Herbert, but I have to get against them. New studio coming soon. Hit the like button, share the videos. We're going to get money this year. Last year was absolutely phenomenal. Our weeks 8 through 14 on Patreon on YouTube were legendary. And we're going to continue that. We're going to keep getting money. Patreon, link in the description. Let's get this money. Great to see you guys.